All worlds begin with Demon Slayer. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 326, asking for advice from Rengoku Kyojuro. I'd like to hear more about it. Rengoku Kyojuro also answered with great interest. Immediately, Tanjiro told Rengoku Kyojuro in detail about the Fire God dance and what happened at Spider Mountain. After listening to Tanjiro's story, Rengoku Kyojuro also showed a blank expression and then said, "This is the first time I've heard of the Fire God dance breathing you mentioned, but it definitely has nothing to do with the flame breathing, so this topic ends here." Hearing this, Tanjiro didn't expect Rengoku Kyojuro's answer to be so simple. No more news? Tanjiro asked helplessly. The breathing of flame has an ancient history, and it only records the breathing of love, which is a branch of the breathing of flame. As for the fire god's dance breathing that you mentioned, it has nothing in common with the fire breathing. No matter what era, there will be swordsmen who use the two breathing methods of fire and water to become pillars. Flame, water, wind, rock, and thunder are the 5 most common and most used breathing methods by swordsmen. The breathing methods used by the snake pillar, insect pillar, love pillar, sound pillar, and mist pillar are all branches of these 5 breathing methods. But the fire god's dance you mentioned is not among these branches, and there is no record of it in any data. Seeing that Tanjiro continued to ask questions, Rengoku Kyojuro told Tanjiro a lot of common sense about breathing methods. Tanjiro was unable to explain the origin of the fire god's dance breathing to Rengoku Kyojuro, so Tanjiro temporarily gave up on investigating the matter of the fire god's dance breathing and changed the subject to ask, "Then does Mr. Rengoku know what the black Nichiren sword represents?" Hearing this, Rengoku Kyojuro looked at Tanjiro and asked in surprise, "Tanjiro, is your Nichiren sword black?" Tanjiro nodded and admitted, "Yes. Master doesn't know why my Nichiren sword is black." "That's true. You are Tomioka's junior brother, and you also use water breathing. According to common sense, your Nichiren sword should be blue like Tomioka's. In fact, the color of the Nichiren sword corresponds to different breathing methods. The 5 major breathing methods of fire, water, wind, thunder, and rock correspond to red, blue, green, yellow, and gray. The corresponding colors of the breathing methods outside the 5 major breathing branches are also different. Maybe it's because you learned the breathing of the god of fire, and then learned the breathing of water, which finally caused your Nichiren sword to be neither red nor blue." Rengoku Kyojuro analyzed it for Tanjiro, based on his own understanding. "Tanjiro, think about it. What will happen if a red hot blade is suddenly put into water?" Rengoku Kyojuro immediately gave Tanjiro an example and asked. Hearing this, Tanjiro thought for a while, and then replied, "The water will boil." However, Tanjiro's answer did not grasp the point. Rengoku Kyojuro couldn't help but shook his head and said, "You didn't grasp the key point of the problem. When a red hot blade is put into water, after quenching, the blade will turn black. You inherited the breathing of the god of fire from your father since you were a child, just like a knife gradually being burned red. Later, you learned the breathing of water from the old senior Urakoda Kisakonji, which is the process of the red hot blade encountering water. This may explain why your Nichiren sword is black." Chapter 327, Do you want to be my stepson? After listening to Rengoku Kyojuro's story, Tanjiro was very excited, and he secretly sighed in his heart why he hadn't thought of it. What Rengoku Kyojuro said was indeed very reasonable in a certain sense. Why didn't I think of it? Thank you, Mr. Rengoku. Tanjiro immediately thanked Rengoku Kyojuro excitedly. "I think you are kind-hearted and talented. Would you like to consider becoming my stepson? Then you can become my successor." Rengoku Kyojuro made such a request to Tanjiro at this time. Hearing this, Tanjiro was obviously a little overwhelmed. He didn't expect that he would be favored by Rengoku Kyojuro. However, Tanjiro did not agree immediately. Instead, he asked Rengoku Kyojuro in some confusion, "Mr. Rengoku, doesn't the stepson of a pillar have to find the user of the same breathing technique? I use water breathing. If I have to inherit, I should inherit senior brother Tomioka's position. Hearing Tanjiro's words, Rengoku Kajiro couldn't help but laugh, and then said, having said that, it is not absolute. Anyone with extraordinary talent can become the successor of a pillar. Of course, there can only be one water-breathing pillar, which means that, if you become my stepson, your future title cannot be water pillar. And you are not a user of flame breathing, so you cannot inherit the title of flame pillar. But you can name yourself fire pillar, or black pillar. Rengoku Kajiro held his chin up, and thought about Tanjiro's future title, as if he had already regarded Tanjiro as his stepson. In fact, I think that, since you can use the fire god dance in battle, maybe the fire god dance breathing can be deeply developed. If you become my stepson, I can also develop and study the fire god dance breathing for you. After all, there has never been a person in history who can master two breathing methods at the same time and can use them. Because once you master a certain breathing method, your body will not be able to adapt to and accept other breathing methods. So there has never been a demon hunter who uses two different breathing methods in history. Rengoku Kajiro continued to explain to Tanjiro why he took him in as his stepson. Hearing this, Tanjiro couldn't help but think of Bai Yu. When Bai Yu was treating himself, my wife Zenitsu and Inosuke the Shidoka family, Tanjiro discovered that Bai Yu seemed to be using another breathing method that he didn't know about. Although Bai Yu didn't explain anything about it, Tanjiro knew that it was definitely not the water breathing. Of course, Tanjiro did not say this. After all, he was the same. If the fire god dance passed down by his father was really a special breathing method, then Tanjiro also mastered two different types of breathing. Since he could do it, it was not surprising that Bai Yu, as a child of destiny, could master two types of breathing. Is there really no record of demon hunters who mastered two types of breathing at the same time in history? Tanjiro couldn't help but ask again. No. What do you think? Do you want to be my stepson? Rengoku Kajiro also asked Tanjiro's opinion. If possible, I would be very happy to do so. Tanjiro also gave Rengoku Kajiro an answer. Just as the two were talking happily, a huge crash suddenly came from the roof of the carriage. Chapter 328, Incident. Boom. A loud noise sounded, and a huge collapse suddenly appeared on the iron sheet on the roof of the carriage, where Tanjiro and Rengoku Kajiro were. It seemed that something heavy had suddenly hit the roof of the carriage. Tanjiro and Rengoku Kajiro immediately looked up at the collapsed part of the carriage roof with vigilance. The passengers in the carriage were frightened by the sudden movement and screamed in panic. All eyes were focused on the collapsed part of the roof. Then, there was a dense crawling sound on the roof again, as if there was something on the roof, and there were quite a few of them. What happened? What's up there? It's so scary. Wow, mom. Because of these movements, the carriage suddenly became chaotic, with the exclamations and confusions of the adults and the crying of the children mixed together. The mice finally showed up. Tanjiro, get ready for battle. Rengoku Kajiro stood up from his seat and put his hand on the Nichiren sword at his waist. Tanjiro's sensitive nose has already smelled the strong ghost on the roof, and his brows are tightly furrowed. There are so many. Don't be afraid, everyone. Squat down with your head in your hands and stay away from the window. Rengoku Kajiro has already loudly ordered the frightened passengers. As soon as Rengoku Kajiro finished speaking, a sound of glass breaking rang out, and a person sitting at the window was grabbed out by a thick giant hand. The speed was extremely fast. Almost in the blink of an eye, the innocent passenger was grabbed out by the ghost ambushing outside the carriage. Damn it. Seeing this, Rengoku Kajiro could only grit his teeth. In such a small carriage, he had no way to stop it. Then, he heard extremely tragic screams from outside, and then blood flowed down near the window. This scene made the passengers in the carriage explode directly, and everyone wanted to escape from this carriage. But at this time, not only their carriage encountered a situation, but similar things happened in other carriages. The passengers in all the carriages were in a mess. Many of them were hiding in a mess, and then they all blocked the door connecting the carriages. If you don't want to die, all of you squat down with your heads in your hands. Rengoku Kajiro emphasized again with a serious face. Rengoku Kajiro's powerful shout made the passengers in the fifth carriage, where he was slightly regain some rationality. Everyone listened to Rengoku Kajiro's words and squatted down with their heads in their hands. Then, there were several sounds of broken windows in the carriage, and then several extremely ugly ghosts flipped into the carriage. You came just in time, you bastards. Die for the sins you just committed. Rengoku Kajiro jumped up, then stepped on the back of the seat in the carriage, and approached the ghosts that flipped into the carriage at a speed that was difficult to detect with the naked eye. Breathing of flame, 1 form, Shiranu, 5-star linkage. As Rengoku Kajiro activated, breathing of flame, 1 form, Shiranu, 5-star linkage. Rengoku Kajiro's figure and sword shadows gorgeously drew a dazzling 5-pointed star flashing with fire, and the 5 ghosts that flipped into the carriage were beheaded by Rengoku Kajiro in an instant. Chapter 329, Zenitsu's request for help. Tanjiro watched Rengoku Kajiro kill 5 targets in an instant, and he took a deep breath. Although Tanjiro has mastered the full concentration normal state, he cannot kill like Rengoku Kajiro. At the fastest, Tanjiro needs 5 seconds. Shiraya-senpai, help. So many ghosts have climbed into the carriage. It's so damn scary. At this moment, Agatsuma Zenitsu ran from the 6th carriage to the 5th carriage in shock, to ask for help from Shiraya. Agatsuma Zenitsu didn't know that Shiraya-senpai and Tanjiro had switched carriages, nor did he know that the flame pillar Rengoku Kajiro was also in the 5th carriage. Tanjiro looked over at Agatsuma Zenitsu and found that the 6th carriage he was guarding was already in chaos. This guy still can't change his timid character. Although his own strength is not weak, he still doesn't dare to fight. Zenitsu, what are you doing? You left. Who will protect the passengers in your car? Tanjiro was extremely dissatisfied with Zenitsu Agatsuma's behavior of leaving his post without permission. Zenitsu Agatsuma, who was timid and cowardly, had never faced such a battle alone. If it was just one ghost, it would be fine. 4 of them suddenly appeared, and the number was enough to scare Zenitsu Agatsuma. Because Zenitsu Agatsuma himself was not confident in himself, he did not think he could handle 4 ghosts at the same time. Tanjiro, don't talk nonsense. 4 ghosts appeared in my car. 4. Do you think there is nothing like you here? Zenitsu Agatsuma stretched out his hand and made a 4 gesture to Tanjiro, fearing that Tanjiro did not know the urgency of the situation he was in. Now is not the time to argue. Let's solve the danger first and then talk. Rengoku Kajiro came in front of Tanjiro and Zenitsu Agatsuma, and after speaking to them, he flashed to the 6th car guarded by Zenitsu Agatsuma. Tanjiro, who are you? And why are you here? Where is Shiraya-senpai? Agatsuma Zenitsu didn't know the flame pillar Rengoku Kajiro, so when he saw him talking to him, he threw a series of questions at Tanjiro. Now is not the time to talk about this. Let's go to other carriages to see what's going on with other people. Tanjiro didn't have the time to chat with Agatsuma Zenitsu now, but chased in the direction Rengoku Kajiro went. Hey, Tanjiro, don't leave me. Agatsuma Zenitsu saw that Tanjiro ignored him and ran away, and suddenly he became a little panicked. But when Agatsuma Zenitsu was about to chase him, an ugly ghost climbed into one of the windows of the carriage and then blocked Agatsuma Zenitsu's way. It appears again. Agatsuma Zenitsu immediately screamed at the top of his voice, and his body involuntarily retreated, and as he retreated, Agatsuma Zenitsu bumped into something. Immediately, Agatsuma Zenitsu stopped, and then Agatsuma Zenitsu saw an extremely long tongue hanging in front of him, and immediately Agatsuma Zenitsu felt something was wrong. There was another one behind him. Agatsuma Zenitsu suddenly jumped forward, distanced himself from the thing behind him, and turned around to look behind him. This is indeed the case. Another long-tongued ghost appeared behind Agatsuma Zenitsu. Chapter 330 Shameless Zenitsu. Agatsuma Zenitsu kept shaking his head to look at the 2 long-tongued ghosts who were sandwiching him, and then said very shamelessly, "Don't stare at me. There are other people in the carriage. Their meat is delicious." Many passengers who were huddled together in fear in the carriage heard Agatsuma Zenitsu's extremely shameless words, and they immediately became agitated. "What are you talking about? Shameless yellow-haired ghost. Little brat. People like you will easily be beaten to death when you go out." These passengers all greeted Agatsuma Zenitsu verbally. If there were no two long-tongued ghosts here, those angry men would definitely rush up and beat Agatsuma Zenitsu. Stop making so much noise. If you keep making so much noise, I won't care about you. Agatsuma Zenitsu heard that he was being talked about, and he was also a little unhappy. When Agatsuma Zenitsu said this, the carriage suddenly became quiet. You bastards of the Demon Slayer Corps, die. One of the long-tongued ghosts spoke to Agatsuma Zenitsu in human language. Then, the long-tongued ghosts that were sandwiching Agatsuma Zenitsu simultaneously launched their long-tongue attacks on Agatsuma Zenitsu. The long tongues of the two long-tongued ghosts shot over like sharp arrows, and at the front end of the long tongues, they opened like flower buds, revealing the sharp and tiny teeth inside. Agatsuma Zenitsu instantly fell to the ground and easily dodged the long-tongue attacks launched by the two long-tongued ghosts. The whole process happened very quickly. If Agatsuma Zenitsu had not mastered the full concentration normal state, and all aspects of his body had been qualitatively improved, Agatsuma Zenitsu would definitely not have been able to avoid such a close-range attack. Although Agatsuma Zenitsu's dodging posture was a bit vulgar, he successfully dodged the attack anyway. Because of this, the tongues of the two long-tongued ghosts suddenly collided with each other and then entangled with each other, which was quite like the mating of animals in the animal world. Agatsuma Zenitsu immediately stood up and then looked at the kissing long-tongued ghost with a disgusted look and then said jokingly, "Wow, no way. You two men, there is no need to show affection in front of me. You are not good friends." It turns out that there are gays among ghosts. As soon as Agatsuma Zenitsu opened his mouth, his chatterbox attribute was activated immediately and he talked non-stop. The two long-tongued ghosts were entangled with their tongues and could not be separated for a while, because their attack is to use the flower bud-like structure of the tongue to tightly suck the target's head and suffocate it to death. Therefore, once entangled by the tongues of these two long-tongued ghosts, ordinary people basically have no hope of survival. Even if the long tongue is cut off, the long tongue will always suck the target's head tightly. If you want to get rid of the long tongue, you have to kill the main body of the long tongue ghost. After making a joke, Agatsuma Zenitsu knew that he couldn't waste the opportunity anymore, so he drew his sword and rushed towards one of the long-tongued demons, shouting at the same time, "Die, you damn gay." After that, Agatsuma Zenitsu swung the sunblade in his hand towards the long-tongued demon in front of him. Agatsuma Zenitsu swung the sword several times with the sword technique and finally cut the long-tongued demon's neck. Agatsuma Zenitsu was about to make a gorgeous ending with the sword, but then he remembered that there was another one and immediately changed his words and said, "I forgot there is another one. Let's make a gorgeous ending." Thunder breathing, one form, Thunderbolt Flash. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 331, Zenitsu's Confession. Agatsuma Zenitsu turned around and lowered his body, then took the thunder breathing, form eye, and thunderbolt flash release postures. Finally, Agatsuma Zenitsu turned into a yellow lightning and flashed behind another long-tongued demon. The next second, the head of the long-tongued demon fell off its body and its body fell to the ground and began to turn into ashes and dissipate little by little. The people in the car were relieved to see the two monsters defeated. Agatsuma Zenitsu's performance finally did not disappoint them. "Big brother is so awesome. I must marry you when I grow up." At this time, a little girl in the car was fascinated by Agatsuma Zenitsu, and she immediately stood up and loudly confessed to Agatsuma Zenitsu. Hearing this, Agatsuma Zenitsu immediately looked at the little girl, then fell in front of the little girl, and then said very excitedly, "Really? Are you really going to marry me?" Agatsuma Zenitsu was also the first time a girl confessed her love to him. Although the girl was still a few years old, it was enough to make Agatsuma Zenitsu excited. After all, children don't lie, and the feelings expressed by children are the most sincere and the most trustworthy. Yeah. The little girl nodded to Agatsuma Zenitsu. Immediately, Agatsuma Zenitsu smiled like a pig, and his image suddenly became a little wretched. When the mother of the little girl saw that Zenitsu Agatsuma was laughing like a pig, she immediately hugged her child in her arms, and then said to Zenitsu Agatsuma with disdain, "What the child said was just a joke, how could you take it seriously?" Really? Zenitsu Agatsuma was not a fool. In order to ease the awkward situation, Zenitsu Agatsuma said, "Did I take it seriously? I was just happy that the child liked me. What are you thinking about, you mama-san? You." The girl's mother was excited when she saw that Zenitsu Agatsuma called her a mama-san, but she didn't know what to say for a while. Immediately, Zenitsu Agatsuma stood up, then looked at his hands and the two dead, long-tongued ghosts, and couldn't help asking himself in his heart, have I really become stronger? The situation in the third carriage, where Bai Yu was much simpler. Although there were also several ghosts breaking into the carriage through the windows, they were all killed instantly by Bai Yu's water breathing, the 13th form, and the domain judgment. Because Bai Yu's current strength can be said to have reached the level of a pillar, so when he encounters these inferior goods, he can naturally kill them in seconds. After solving the situation on his side, Bai Yu rushed to the fourth carriage, where Sakatsuki Ichiro was. His strength was relatively weak, so Bai Yu chose to go to the carriage, where Sakatsuki Ichiro was to check the situation first. If he could handle it alone, Bai Yu would let him solve it alone, and then go to the second carriage, where Murata Shinichi was to check on Murata Shinichi's situation. After arriving at the fourth carriage, I saw that Sakatsuki Ichiro had been entangled with 3 ghosts. These 3 ghosts were not the long-tongued ghosts that Agatsuma Zenitsu encountered, but the kind with very developed muscles and a huge body. Obviously, this kind of ghost is a ghost that takes strength and physical strength as the direction of growth. Therefore, Sakatsuki Ichiro, who is not very strong, has to deal with 3 power type ghosts at once, which is still very difficult. Chapter 332 Muscle Ghost. Ichiro Sakata was seen holding the Nichiren sword tightly in both hands, and then resisting the heavy punches of the 3 muscle ghosts. Bai Yu could see that Ichiro Sakata's arms were trembling slightly, which was a sign of exerting his strength. At this time, the passengers in the carriage, where Ichiro Sakata was located, had already been transferred to other relatively safe carriages. Now, there was no one else in the fourth carriage, except Ichiro Sakata and Bai Yu who came. Ichiro, is it okay? If not, squeak. Bai Yu sat down casually in an empty seat in the carriage, and then said to Ichiro Sakata. Hearing this, Sakatsuki Ichiro gritted his teeth, and said to Bai Yu stubbornly, "No problem, Captain Bai Yu, it's just that my moves are too destructive, and will destroy the carriage." Just after he finished speaking, one of the 3 muscle ghosts suddenly retracted his fist, then charged up, and blasted at Sakatsuki Ichiro's Nichiren sword again. Then Sakatsuki Ichiro's figure slid back 2 or 3 meters, and finally after Sakatsuki Ichiro stabilized his figure, he spat out a mouthful of blood from his mouth. Bai Yu had seen the move of sound breathing, which was a very destructive range, AoE, damage move. Therefore, sound breathing was also a very destructive breathing method among all breathing methods. If the move of sound breathing was used in a small space like a train carriage, if it was not well controlled, the damage to the carriage would be small, and the fear was that the carriage would be disconnected. Therefore, it was understandable that Sakatsuki Ichiro could not perform it and was suppressed. Since you can't use it, let me do it. Bai Yu stood up immediately, and then his figure flashed in front of the 3 muscle ghosts. Finally, Bai Yu used water breathing, 4 types, and strike tide on the 3 muscle ghosts. Water breathing, 4 types, strike tide. The sun wheel sword in Bai Yu's hand was like a dragon dancing out of the water. Bai Yu swung 3 consecutive slashes at the necks of the 3 muscle ghosts. Because Bai Yu's 3 consecutive slashes were extremely coherent, Sakatsuki Ichiro only saw Bai Yu swing an extremely tortuous slash. The tortuous sword path was like a dragon dancing, and it brushed near the necks of the 3 muscle ghosts. Then, the heads of the 3 muscle ghosts separated from their bodies and fell to the ground. After dealing with the muscle ghost, Bai Yu put the Nichiren sword back into the scabbard and then said to Sakata Seiichiro, "You continue to stay here. Maybe there will be another ghost outside the carriage to crawl in again. I will go to Shinichi to see the situation." After that, Bai Yu ran to the second carriage. At this time, although the passengers in all the carriages did not know who Bai Yu's group was, they all knew that Bai Yu and the young people with sabers were good people who helped them resolve this crisis. When Bai Yu rushed to the second carriage, Murata Shinichi had just beheaded the last ghost in the carriage. "Have you solved it all? Are there any casualties?" Bai Yu asked Murata Shinichi. Hearing this, Murata Shinichi was released from the state of mental concentration during the battle, and then nodded and replied to Bai Yu, "I encountered 2, and they were solved. There are no casualties for the time being." At this time, Hattori Kyujo also came to the second carriage from the first carriage. From her arrival, it can be seen that the situation on her side should also be solved. Chapter 333 Don't wipe your snot on me. "Kyujo, how is the situation over there? How many ghosts did you encounter? Are there any casualties?" Bai Yu immediately asked Hattori Kyujo again. Upon hearing this, Hattori Kyujo replied to Bai Yu in a very official and serious manner. "Report to the captain. 2 ghosts appeared, both of which have been killed by me, and there are no casualties." "Okay, you continue to stay here. I'll go check on the others." Bai Yu immediately ordered again. "Yes, Captain Bai Yu." "Yes, Senior Bai Yu." Hattori Kyujo and Murata Shinichi responded in unison. After that, Bai Yu rushed 2 other carriages again. When Bai Yu came to the 5th carriage, he met Agatsuma Zenitsu, who stayed in the 5th carriage. When Zenitsu Agatsuma saw Bai Yu, he immediately rushed over and said, "Senior Bai Yu, it's so great to see you. My anxious heart has been calmed down. Zenitsu, I warn you, don't wipe your snot on me." Bai Yu saw Zenitsu Agatsuma's face rubbing against his chest and immediately warned Zenitsu Agatsuma. Hearing this, Zenitsu Agatsuma immediately raised his face, then sniffed his snot, and then smiled at Bai Yu awkwardly. Bai Yu could probably guess why Zenitsu Agatsuma was here. He estimated that Zenitsu Agatsuma was scared by the sudden change and wanted to run to the 5th carriage to find him, but he had already exchanged seats with Tanjiro and then only found Tanjiro and Ringoku Kyojiro. Tanjiro and Ringoku Kyojiro obviously rushed to Zenitsu Agatsuma after solving the situation here. Time goes back to the first moment of the incident. After hearing the noise outside the carriage, Inosuke, who was staying in the 8th carriage, became excited. "Here they come. They are all here." Inosuke crossed his hands and grasped the handle of the Nichiren sword at his waist and then pulled out the 2 Nichiren swords. The passengers, who were already in a state of shock, seeing Inosuke pull out the sword, the fear in their hearts deepened a lot. The passengers near Inosuke kept their distance from him, and some people were so frightened that they fell down when they were keeping their distance from Inosuke. Then, 3 broken window sounds were heard, and 3 sturdy, muscle ghosts flipped in from the window. Seeing these sturdy, muscle ghosts, Inosuke couldn't help but recall the giant-like, spider-faced ghost he met on Spider Mountain that day. It can be said that the spider-faced ghost is Inosuke's black history, because Inosuke was defeated by the spider-faced ghost. However, although these muscle ghosts are not as huge as the spider-faced ghost, they are only compared to the spider-faced ghost. Compared with normal people, their muscles are abnormally strong. Among the 3 muscle ghosts, 1 muscle ghost has extremely uncoordinated arms. One of the arms is even bigger and stronger than the other, like a gas tank. Obviously, its gas tank-like thick arm has been specially strengthened. Among the 3 muscle ghosts, except for the one with a unicorn arm, whose movements will be affected by that arm, the other 2 muscle ghosts do not have such a situation. This time, no matter how strong the physique is, I will tear it to pieces. Inosuke ignited a surging fighting spirit, determined not to let the predicament of Spider Mountain happen again. Chapter 334 Inosuke's Battle. After saying that, Inosuke rushed towards the muscle ghost with the Kirin arm and decisively launched his breathing technique. Breath of the Beast, 2 fangs, sharp blade slash. Breath of the Beast, 2 fangs, sharp blade slash. This technique does not have any skills. It is a simple cross slash launched at the target, and when the cross slash is launched, it will be accompanied by sharp sword energy. When Inosuke's figure was 2 meters away from the Kirin arm, Muscle Ghost, he kicked his legs and jumped, and then used the downward pressure generated by the jump to press towards the Kirin arm. Muscle Ghost. When Inosuke's figure pressed close to the Kirin arm, Muscle Ghost, Inosuke swung the 2 sun wheel swords tightly held in his hands at the neck of the Kirin arm, Muscle Ghost, in a cross shape. The Kirin-armed Muscle Ghost didn't seem to be very agile, but his reaction was very fast. At the moment, when Inosuke's sun blade fell, he raised his Kirin arm to block Inosuke's move, the sharp blade slash. The Kirin arm of this Kirin-armed Muscle Ghost was specially strengthened, so Inosuke's attack hit the Kirin arm, but did not cut it off. When the blade touched the bone, it stopped. Just when Inosuke's attack did not have a very good effect, the other 2 Muscle Ghosts took this opportunity to pounce on Inosuke, as if they wanted to control Inosuke through a bear hug. Although Inosuke may not be as good as these Muscle Ghosts, Inosuke's body is definitely not as agile as they can. Inosuke's body suddenly flipped backwards, and then flipped onto the shoulder of the Kirin-armed Muscle Ghost, and as a result, the Muscle Ghost, who wanted to pounce on Inosuke and hug him missed. Inosuke had already prepared for a counterattack. When he stood on the shoulder of the unicorn-armed Muscle Ghost, Inosuke did another front flip, then went around the back of the Muscle Ghost, who had missed his move, and launched a counterattack against the Muscle Ghost. Beast breathing, 3 fangs, fangs tearing. Beast breathing, 3 fangs, fangs tearing. This move is also a move without any skills. Simply using the double blades to swing a cross cut at the target, combined with the saw-like fracture on Inosuke's Nichirin sword, it can achieve a very impressive tearing effect. Inosuke's fangs tearing hit the back of Muscle Ghost's neck. The unique fracture tore Muscle Ghost's neck off completely. Finally, Inosuke fell to the ground, and his body was half squatted to relieve the impact of the fall, while his arms were spread out to maintain the posture after the move. As soon as Inosuke's feet touched the ground, another Muscle Ghost punched Inosuke in the head, instantly knocking Inosuke out. The wild boar mask that Inosuke was wearing was directly knocked off, and finally Inosuke fell into the crowd of passengers. When the passengers saw that Inosuke had landed directly where they were frightened and stepped back, leaving a separate place for Inosuke. Fortunately, after Inosuke suffered a heavy headbutt from Tanjiro last time, he had special training for his head, otherwise, Inosuke would have been in a lot of trouble with that blow just now. Without the wild boar mask, Inosuke can be seen lying on the floor of the carriage with an excited smile, and blood can also be seen coming out of his nose after he was hit hard. Chapter 335 Iron Maiden Inosuke. Seeing that Inosuke could still laugh, the passengers couldn't help but think that Inosuke might have been beaten into a fool. After all, they could imagine the terrifying force of the punch that Muscle Ghost had just thrown at Inosuke. They all felt very lucky that Inosuke was not killed directly, although he might become a fool because of it. Inosuke shook his head, then stood up again, wiped the blood from his nose with his hand, and said, "My head has been specially trained, and this kind of force will not affect me at all." After saying that, Inosuke ignored the Muscle Ghost with the Kirin arm and rushed towards the other Muscle Ghost, who attacked him. The Muscle Ghost with the Kirin arm had already begun to accumulate strength and then punched in the direction of Inosuke. Although this punch did not hit Inosuke, the strong shockwave still hit Inosuke. Inosuke didn't expect that the fist of this Kirin arm Muscle Ghost could actually produce such an explosion. Without hitting the target, it could still hit the target with a huge impact generated by the huge fist force. Inosuke's figure was forced back by the impact. After stabilizing his figure, Inosuke crushed towards the Muscle Ghost again. Seeing that Inosuke crushed up again, the Kirin arm Muscle Ghost once again accumulated strength and repeated the previous operation to consume Inosuke. In the narrow compartment, it was really not easy to avoid the attack of the Muscle Ghost because of the space. The movement was restricted. If it was changed to a spacious environment, the situation would be different. These Muscle Ghosts, who only rely on brute force to kill the target, will only become stupid pigs that can be slaughtered by ghost hunters. However, Inosuke, who already knew that the Kirin arm, muscle ghost, could produce a huge shockwave through the Kirin arm, already had a way to deal with it. The unicorn-armed, muscle ghost, punched the approaching Inosuke again, and Inosuke immediately knelt on his knees, then lay back, and slid under the shockwave. Because the shockwave did not hit Inosuke, it continued to move forward, and finally hit a group of passengers behind to the rear of the carriage. Because the shockwave was extended over a long distance, the power was greatly reduced, which also prevented the passengers affected by the shockwave from dying. Inosuke's fighting style is like this. It is impossible for him to take care of the passengers in the carriage. Once he is in a fighting state, he only has ghost in his eyes. Inosuke, who slid from the ground at a very low posture to avoid the shockwave, suddenly exerted force on his waist and stood up again in an instant. As Inosuke stood up, he kicked his feet hard and flipped behind the unicorn-armed muscle ghost. Because the Kirin arm, muscle ghost, was still in the state of punching, and the power of his arm had not been fully released, he had no time to turn around to deal with Inosuke's flanking. However, after Inosuke flanked, he did not immediately attack the Kirin arm, muscle ghost, but kicked the Kirin arm, muscle ghost's back again with both feet, dodging the punch from another muscle ghost. Chapter 336 Crisis Resolved. Inosuke had already suffered a loss once, and he knew that the other muscle ghost must be paying attention to his movements at all times, so Inosuke did not rush to attack the Kirin arm, muscle ghost. After 2 consecutive somersaults, Inosuke successfully went around again. This time, Inosuke started to counterattack. He turned around in the air and used his beast breath, 3 fangs, and fangs to tear at the back of the muscle ghost's neck. Then, the neck of the muscle ghost was successfully cut by Inosuke's knife. Inosuke's movements did not stop. After landing, he jumped again. When the Kirin arm, muscle ghost, turned around to defend, it found that Inosuke was no longer behind him. At this time, Inosuke had already jumped into the air. Just when the Kirin arm, muscle ghost, turned around again, Inosuke, who had successfully gone around again, swung the 2 sun wheel swords tightly held in his hands towards the neck of the Kirin arm, muscle ghost. Breath of the beast, 3 fangs, tear with fangs. In the end, the neck of this muscle ghost was successfully cut by Inosuke. After the battle, Inosuke put on the wild boar headgear that he had dropped. As soon as Inosuke put on the headgear, Tanjiro and Rengoku Kaijiro appeared in the carriage where Inosuke was. The 2 saw the 3 muscle ghost corpses disappearing on the ground and knew that Inosuke had solved the 3 ghosts that attacked the carriage by himself. Inosuke, are you okay? Tanjiro asked after seeing Inosuke. Hahaha, it's okay. They are just small minions, and they can be solved in a few strokes. Inosuke laughed proudly with his hands on his hips. It's good that you're okay. Mr. Rengoku, let's go to the remaining 2 carriages to take a look. Shinji stayed in the last 2 carriages, and I don't know what the situation is like over there. Seeing that Inosuke was fine, Tanjiro did not continue to chat, but said to Rengoku Kaijiro, I'll go too. Inosuke was also interested and wanted to go over to see the situation. For a militant like Inosuke who hunts ghosts as his prey, he naturally wants to continue hunting ghosts. Immediately, Tanjiro, Rengoku Kaijiro and Inosuke rushed to the last 2 carriages. Murata Shinji, who stayed in the last 2 carriages, was much luckier. Perhaps because there were fewer people in the carriages, no ghosts invaded his carriage. Although he also noticed the movement in Inosuke's carriage, he did not choose to support him immediately because Murata Shinji could not guarantee that after he left the 2 carriages he stayed, it would not encounter any emergencies. If a loophole was taken advantage of for this reason, Murata Shinji would be a sinner. After Tanjiro, Rengoku Kaijiro and Inosuke met with Murata Shinji, they simply asked about the situation. Shinji Murata also explained the situation. After Inosuke learned that there were no ghosts invading these 2 carriages, he felt a little disappointed. While the group was talking, Bai Yu and Zenitsu Agatsuma had already rushed over. Tanjiro saw Bai Yu coming, so he asked Bai Yu happily, Bai Yu Senior, how is the situation on your side? Everything has been resolved, and there are no casualties for the time being. Bai Yu then briefly explained the situation on his side. Chapter 337. The real danger has not yet appeared. Afterwards, Bai Yu turned over from the window of the carriage and came out of the carriage. After checking outside the carriage and confirming that it was safe, Bai Yu gathered everyone in the last carriage with fewer people. Because the crisis was resolved, the train attendants on the train began to calm the emotions of the passengers and then maintain order in the carriage. Everyone briefly explained their situation. After statistics, there were a total of 28 ghosts that attacked the train this time, which was a very surprising number. It is really abnormal that so many ghosts attacked this train together. At this time, Kentaro now pushed his glasses and brought up this very abnormal situation. This is also a point of doubt for everyone, because ghosts are not a group that likes to act collectively, so this behavior of a large number of ghosts acting together is really too abnormal. Maybe these ghosts are used to consume our combat effectiveness. Bai Yu said at this time. Brother Bai Yu is right. There must be someone behind all these ghosts. The real big rat has not come out yet. Rengoku Kaijiro continued Bai Yu's words at this time. Is it the 12 demon moons? Sakata Seiichiro suddenly became interested, because in the Spider Mountain, Sakata Seiichiro did not encounter the 12 demon moons, so he still wanted to see the 12 demon moons. Rengoku Kaijiro nodded, and then reminded everyone, so, everyone can't let down their guard. Come on. Come on. All of you will die under my sword. Inosuke said with full fighting spirit. When Tanjiro heard that there were still ghosts of the 12 demon moons who had not appeared, his face became solemn. Because Tanjiro had personally experienced the strength of the 12 demon moons, Tanjiro was very clear about the power of the 12 demon moons. When Zenitsu Agatsuma heard that there might be more ghosts, he was also faintly afraid. Senior Bai Yu, Lord Rengoku, should we continue to stay in one carriage? Murata Shinichi asked the two core members of the team at this time. Rengoku Kaijiro did not answer Shinichi's question, but looked at Bai Yu. After all, these team members are now commanded by Bai Yu, so how to decide should be left to Bai Yu. Not for the time being. If there are still 12 demons who have not appeared, it is very dangerous to disperse you. So it is better for everyone to stay together. Bai Yu replied immediately. When Agatsuma Zenitsu heard Bai Yu's arrangement, his mood suddenly improved, and then he cheered. Great. In this way, Senior Bai Yu can protect me at any time. At this time, the train conductor came to the carriage where Bai Yu and his group were. Dear passengers, because we encountered some small troubles just now, it caused some panic. But please don't be afraid, the situation has been resolved. Please rest assured to take this train. The conductor first made a simple statement to the passengers in the carriage. Immediately, the conductor said, now please cooperate with me to check your tickets. Thank you. After that, the conductor began to check everyone's tickets. After a while, the conductor checked Bai Yu and his group with a smile on his face and said, handsome guys, and this beautiful lady, please show your tickets. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 338. Falling into a deep sleep. Bai Yu and his group also cooperated and took out their tickets and then checked them one by one with the conductor. After checking everyone's tickets, the conductor politely said goodbye to the passengers in the carriage again before leaving. After that, the atmosphere became much quieter and many people in the carriage gradually fell asleep. As time went by, Bai Yu found that many people in the team seemed to have fallen asleep, even Rengoku Kaijiro, who was the flame pillar. Immediately, Bai Yu felt that something was wrong. Suddenly, an irresistible sleepiness attacked Bai Yu, and Bai Yu immediately turned on the ghost transformation. Once the ghost transformation was turned on, Bai Yu lifted all the negative effects. Bai Yu, who regained consciousness again, quickly looked around and found that Tanjiro and his group had all fallen asleep. Bai Yu immediately went to the two nearest carriages to check the situation and found that everyone in the carriage was in a deep sleep, which was too abnormal. Just when Bai Yu was about to return to the carriage where Tanjiro and the others were, a person stood in front of Bai Yu. To be more precise, it was a ghost. This ghost was a man, wearing a noble suit, and looked like a nobleman, but there were 2 words lower string on one of his eyes, and a 1 on the other eye. Hey, aren't you a human? You look even scarier than a ghost. The first of the lower strings couldn't help but reveal a curious expression, and asked Bai Yu. Bai Yu's current appearance made the first of the lower strings mistakenly believe that Bai Yu was not a human, but the aura on Bai Yu was not the aura of a ghost, so he didn't know what species Bai Yu was, and he looked so creepy. Everyone else is immersed in their own sweet dreams. Why don't you join them? Don't you like beautiful dreams? Then I can also let you have a nightmare. In fact, I like to let people have a sweet dream and then continue to face the arrival of a nightmare. Because when the nightmare comes, I like the distorted expressions of human beings because of fear the most. I like it so much that I can't stand it. The lower string 1 continued to speak to Bai Yu. Bai Yu listened to the tone of the lower string 1's speech and couldn't help but wonder if the lower string 1 was a sissy before. He spoke like a woman. Bai Yu was too lazy to talk nonsense, and he flashed forward and cut off the neck of the lower string 1 immediately. Then Bai Yu rushed back to the carriage where Tanjiro and others were, but as soon as he returned to the carriage where Tanjiro and others were, the lower string 1 strangely emerged from the floor of the carriage. It was as if its body grew out of the floor. Seeing the lower string 1 appear in front of him again, Bai Yu couldn't help but wonder. I had just chopped off his neck, but the lower rank 1 was still fine. Was I in a dream? Was that why I couldn't kill the lower rank 1? If I was in a dream, I should be able to create people or objects through my imagination. So Bai Yu began to concentrate on his imagination, but the things he imagined did not appear. Immediately, Bai Yu felt that he should not be in a dream. After all, he had activated the devilization, which was immune to all negative effects imposed on him. Chapter 339, Confrontation with the lower rank 1. Assuming that he activated the demonization in his dream, even if the lower string 1 could control his dream. In any case, in the spiritual world of dreams, Bai Yu should be the one who dominated. You must be very surprised. I haven't died, even though you cut off my neck. I'll tell you secretly, no matter how many times you cut off my neck, I won't die. The lower string 1 said to Bai Yu in a joking tone. Look how proud you are. Even so, can you kill me? Bai Yu said to the lower string 1 sarcastically. The lower string 1's proud smile froze for a moment, and then he launched a blood demon art on Bai Yu. Blood demon art sleeping spell. The lower string 1 stretched out one of his hands towards Bai Yu, and on the back of the hand it stretched out, there was a strange mouth. And that mouth made a strange sound, like chanting the so-called sleeping spell. Bai Yu saw that the lower string 1 had cast a blood demon art, the sleeping spell, which put him into a deep sleep. He was immediately more certain that he was not dreaming. The reason why the lower string 1 was not afraid of beheading was probably due to other reasons. The lower string 1 chanted the sleeping spell for a long time, but Bai Yu was not affected at all. Just like when he faced the telekinetic ghost who controlled telekinesis, he completely ignored any control and negative states. It's so ugly. How did you become the number 1 of the lower strings with such a rubbish blood demon art? I think the lower string 4 is much better than you. Relying on the tyranny of the demonization, Bai Yu continued to taunt the lower string 1. Indeed, this kind of controlled blood demon art is really rubbish in front of Bai Yu who has activated the demonization. After saying that, Bai Yu shot a spider silk at the lower string 1, then pulled it over fiercely, and then very brutally pulled off his hand with a mouth. And finally the arm was completely burned by Bai Yu with the power of the demon. Then, Bai Yu grabbed the neck of the lower string 1 tightly, and then ordered it. Now, let everyone on the train sleep, or you will die ugly. Hey, this is not my real body, you can't kill me. The lower string 1 laughed at Bai Yu, as if the stronger and more domineering Bai Yu was, the more excited this guy was. Hearing this, Bai Yu knew why this guy was not afraid of being beheaded. So this is what happened. Our game is over. Now I will eat everyone in the train. You just wait to collect their bodies. After the lower string 1 finished speaking, the whole person turned into a pool of blood and sank into the floor of the carriage. Then, it was seen that many tumor-like things grew on the seats in the carriage. These things seemed to be alive and devoured the people on the seats bit by bit. Bai Yu saw this situation and probably guessed something. Since the lower string one could emerge from the carriage at any time and threaten to eat everyone in the carriage, it is possible that the lower string one has used his body to establish some kind of connection with the entire train. In other words, the body of the lower string one may have been integrated into the train, and now the entire train is its body. Chapter 340 Rescue. This can be seen from the tumors that emerged from the seats in the carriage. Bai Yu knew that he had to find a way to wake up Tanjiro and others, otherwise he would not be able to control the situation by himself. Judging from the speed at which these tumors devoured, Bai Yu could see that one of the lower strings could not eat up the people on the entire train at once. However, Bai Yu also knew that he could not take care of every carriage by himself, so if he wanted to save the people on the entire train, he had to wake up Tanjiro and others. Even if he woke up 2 people, Bai Yu could barely control the situation. If the flame-pillaring Goku Kajiro could wake up at this time, it would be even better. Immediately, Bai Yu lifted the demonization and began to use the breath of wood. Bai Yu pulled his 2-color sun wheel sword out of the scabbard, and then Bai Yu inserted part of the tip of the sun wheel sword into the wooden floor of the carriage, and then Bai Yu launched the wood invasion. Wood breathing. Form 1. Wood invasion. Under the final realm of wood breathing, Bai Yu's current wood invasion is incomparable to the previous one. Judging from the amount of wood essence produced, Bai Yu has released 5 times more wood essence than before. At this time, the green part of the blade of Bai Yu's 2-color sun wheel sword has already emitted a faint green light. At the same time, a large amount of wood essence has been steaming around Bai Yu and the sun wheel sword. These wood essences spread rapidly to the entire carriage through the 2-color sun wheel sword inserted into the floor, and those tumors that devoured people were invaded by the wood essence and began to shrink and necrotize rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye, and finally completely turned into ashes. The same is true for the tumors on Tanjiro and others. Bai Yu temporarily controlled the situation in this carriage and immediately asked for help from Nezuko, who was wearing a wooden box next to Tanjiro. Nezuko, come out quickly and help me wake up your brother. Nezuko in the wooden box of the mist spruce heard Bai Yu's call and immediately broke out of the wooden box. Then, Nezuko immediately shook Tanjiro. However, no matter how Nezuko shook, Tanjiro showed no signs of waking up. As a result, Nezuko suddenly hit Tanjiro's forehead with a headbutt, and Nezuko's forehead was immediately broken, and the blood that flowed out also dripped on Tanjiro's face. The next second, Tanjiro suddenly woke up and looked around. Tanjiro, wake up and go to other carriages to save people. We met one of the lower strings. This guy has merged with the train and is now devouring everyone in the carriage. Bai Yu saw Tanjiro wake up and immediately ordered Tanjiro. Hearing this, Tanjiro did not ask any more questions, but nodded heavily to Bai Yu. I know. After that, Tanjiro rushed to other carriages to start the rescue. Tanjiro, who had escaped from the dream, also roughly knew that he was hit by the blood demon technique of, but now is not the time to discuss this with Bai Yu. Bai Yu's anxious tone showed that the situation was really a bit tricky. Nezuko, you stay here to protect Zenitsu and the others, and then try to wake them up. Bai Yu immediately ordered Nezuko again. Nezuko nodded to Bai Yu and then began to wake up others in his own way. After Bai Yu finished speaking, he rushed to other carriages and started to rescue people. Chapter 341, The Awakened Flame Pillar and Inosuke. Tanjiro, you take care of the carriages at the back, and I'll take care of the carriages in front. Also, be careful of the blood demon art of one of the lower ranks, which can make people fall asleep. Bai Yu reminded Tanjiro, who was slashing at the tumor, when he passed by the carriage where Tanjiro was. After that, Bai Yu continued to rush to the carriages in front of the train without stopping. While Bai Yu and Tanjiro were trying their best to rescue the passengers in the carriage, the flame-pillaring Goku Kajiro and Inosuke also successfully escaped from the dream. Rengoku Kajiro woke up and saw that both Bai Yu and Tanjiro were gone, so he knew that they must have gone to deal with emergencies. Immediately, Rengoku Kajiro could not help but blame himself. When I was dozing off, such a change actually happened. I never thought it would happen. I really never thought it would happen. I'm really unworthy of the title of Flame Pillar. I really want to find a crack in the ground to crawl into. Inosuke, leave the rescue to me. Your task is to quickly find the real body of Ghost on the train and then kill it. Rengoku Kaijiro immediately ordered Inosuke, who had just woken up. I know what to do without you telling me. Really? Inosuke complained in his heart that he was being ordered around. After that, Inosuke climbed onto the roof of the car through the window and then opened his spatial perception in the relatively empty space on the roof. Beast breathing, 7th form, spatial perception. Inosuke half knelt on one knee, spread his hands at the same time, and started to perceive. Inosuke's perception was like a radar, quickly scanning each carriage, and finally found a suspicious sign of life in the locomotive. Found it. Inosuke was overjoyed, then stood up on the roof, and ran towards the locomotive. Nezuko, you stay here, and look after the others. Rengoku Kaijiro immediately told Nezuko, who was waking up the other team members. This was Rengoku Kaijiro's trust and recognition of Nezuko. After saying that, Rengoku Kaijiro's whole body suddenly jumped up, like a bullet being fired. A circular shock wave caused by the air explosion was generated behind him, and then the whole car shook suddenly. In the blink of an eye, Rengoku Kaijiro disappeared in the 10th car. Looking along the aisle of the car, it was found that there was a long flame burning on the floor of the aisle. The flame soon extinguished and dissipated slowly from the starting point where Rengoku Kaijiro disappeared. At this time, Tanjiro had already rescued the 7th carriage. Rengoku Kaijiro stopped in front of Tanjiro and said to him, Tanjiro, the ghost has merged with this train. Go and find the ghost's body with Inosuke. Leave the rescue to me. Mr. Rengoku, has Inosuke woken up? Where is he now? Tanjiro was delighted when he heard Rengoku Kaijiro say that Inosuke had also woken up. Because of Bai Yu and Rengoku Kaijiro, the passengers in that carriage were much safer. However, what Tanjiro did not expect was that the ghost had merged with the train. No wonder Tanjiro felt that the whole train was filled with the smell of the ghost. Tanjiro, I'm on the roof, but I won't wait for you. Immediately, the sound of Inosuke running and talking came from the roof. Chapter 340 to heading to the combustion chamber. Sensing the movement on the roof, Tanjiro said to Rengoku Kaijiro, then the rescue mission is left to you, Mr. Rengoku. After that, Tanjiro also flipped out of the car window and came to the roof and then saw Inosuke running on the roof against the strong wind. Inosuke, wait for me. Tanjiro immediately chased after him and shouted to Inosuke. After catching up with Inosuke, Tanjiro asked, Inosuke, have you found the true body of the ghost? Hearing this, Inosuke replied very proudly, of course, I said, I'm better than you. Inosuke thought that he was better than Tanjiro in all aspects, so when he heard Tanjiro ask this, Inosuke knew that Tanjiro must not have found the true body of the ghost, which proved that Tanjiro was not as good as himself, and this was the reason why Inosuke was proud. In fact, the main reason is that the whole train is filled with a strong ghost smell, so Tanjiro's nose cannot quickly determine the location of the ghost body. It is necessary to compare the smell differences of each car section by section to make a more accurate judgment. In addition, the train is moving at high speed. The airflow in the car is flowing rapidly, which also affects Tanjiro's sense of smell. Inosuke's spatial perception is not affected by the air at all. As long as it is not too complicated, Inosuke's spatial perception can play a very good effect. It's in front. The front is the life gate of this god of the earth. Just destroy it. Inosuke said again. Is it in the front of the train? Tanjiro couldn't help but think of this possibility, because the front of the train is a place that ordinary people can't touch, and only the conductor who drives this train will stay in the front of the train. Then, Tanjiro and Inosuke went from the roof to the combustion chamber of the locomotive without stopping. Outside the door of the combustion chamber, it was already sealed by a large number of tumors. This is it. It's very suspicious inside, Inosuke immediately said to Tanjiro. Hearing this, Tanjiro stood outside the combustion chamber and already felt a stronger smell than the rear of the car, and the combustion chamber was sealed by these tumors, which was also very suspicious. The tumors seemed to have life. After Tanjiro and Inosuke appeared, they instantly turned into countless ghost hands and grabbed the two Tanjiro and Inosuke immediately waved their swords to resist, cutting down those ghost hands that were close to them. Water breathing, first form reformed, water surface slashing continuous slash. Facing the dense ghost hands, Tanjiro also used the first form reformed that Bai Yu taught him. This was also the first time Tanjiro used it in actual combat, because so many ghost hands reminded Tanjiro of the hand ghost in Fujiki Mountain. When Bai Yu dealt with the hand ghost of the hand ghost, he used the first form reformed water surface slashing continuous slash. Therefore, Tanjiro also followed Bai Yu's example and used the water surface slash combo. Tanjiro slashed 12 times in 1 second and 24 times in 2 seconds. With the support of Inosuke, those ghost hands were instantly cleared by Tanjiro and Inosuke. Inosuke, break the door. Tanjiro immediately reminded Inosuke. Chapter 343 The Bewitched Train Driver. Don't order me. I know it without you telling me. Inosuke scolded Tanjiro with some disgust. After that, Inosuke slashed the outer door of the combustion chamber with his sword. Beast breathing, second form, sharp blade slash. A cross of sword energy immediately broke the outer door of the combustion chamber. Then Tanjiro and Inosuke saw the train driver who was responsible for adding coal in the combustion chamber looking at them in panic. The kind-hearted Tanjiro thought that the train driver was an innocent person trapped in the combustion chamber, so he shouted to him, "Come out. It's dangerous inside." Just when the train driver was panicking and at a loss, the voice of the lower string one came to his mind, saying, "Go stab them in the back. You must catch them by surprise. Then I will make you one of us, a being beyond humans, immortal." Under the instigation of the lower string one, the train driver ran out of the combustion chamber in a panic, and then shrank behind Tanjiro and Inosuke. "Are you okay?" Tanjiro immediately asked the train driver. The train driver shook his head violently, as if he was so scared that he lost his voice. "Tanjiro, ignore him. Follow me to raid the nest of this giant stink bug." Inosuke didn't want to pay too much attention to the train driver, so he urged Tanjiro. After that, Inosuke was the first to walk into the combustion chamber. The combustion chamber was also full of tumors all around, giving people a chilling sense of fear and oppression. This can't be the mouth of this thing. Inosuke couldn't help but mutter to himself. At this time, Tanjiro told the train driver, "You go to another car to hide first. Leave this to us." After that, Tanjiro turned around and walked into the combustion chamber. The train driver's panic expression suddenly became gloomy and terrifying at this time, and he quietly approached Tanjiro and at the same time took out the knife he had been carrying in his arms and held it tightly in his hand. When the train driver was only half a meter away from Tanjiro, he stabbed Tanjiro's back with the knife in his hand. Tanjiro's sense of crisis made him feel the danger approaching behind him, and he turned around immediately. When he saw the train driver behind him, Tanjiro's hand that was about to swing the knife suddenly froze. It was also because of this that the knife in the train driver's hand successfully stabbed Tanjiro's abdomen. The train driver was already murderous at this time. Seeing that he succeeded with one knife, he planned to draw the knife again and stab Tanjiro again, launching a crazy attack on Tanjiro. But Tanjiro did not give the crazy train driver this opportunity. When the train driver wanted to draw the knife, Tanjiro had already grabbed his hand tightly. Tanjiro's strength was unmatched by the train driver, so the train driver immediately showed a painful expression and screamed, "I'll let go. Why do you want to hurt me?" Tanjiro asked the train driver with a very angry expression. "Because I don't want to be a human being anymore. I want to become a being beyond humans. I want to be immortal." The train driver answered very crazily, as if he was possessed by a demon. Chapter 344 Exposed Cervical Vertebrae. When Tanjiro heard what the train driver said, he knew that he must have been bewitched by the ghost, and at the same time he felt pathetic. "Tanjiro, are you okay? I'll help you kill this guy." Inosuke also noticed the sudden situation on Tanjiro's side and saw that Tanjiro was stabbed by the train driver, so he planned to help Tanjiro kill the train driver. "Wait, Inosuke. He is innocent. Don't hurt him." Tanjiro called Inosuke. "Why?" Inosuke was a little confused about Tanjiro's brain circuit. Inosuke knew that if someone threatened his life, he would naturally not be polite. He was just bewitched by the ghost. As long as we solve the ghost's body, he will naturally regain his sanity. Tanjiro explained immediately. After that, Tanjiro knocked the train driver unconscious with a fierce knife, then pulled out the knife that stabbed into his abdomen, and finally threw it into the hot burning furnace. The furnace was full of red hot coals. Tanjiro was afraid that the train driver might get up again and get in his way, so he didn't dare to throw the knife around. Inosuke, don't delay any longer. I can clearly smell that the main body is under the floor of the combustion chamber. Let's break the floor. Tanjiro urged Inosuke. Hearing this, Inosuke said, I know. If I didn't care about you, I would have solved this iron centipede long ago. Tanjiro did not continue to argue with Inosuke, but adjusted his breathing. The stab in the abdomen had some impact on Tanjiro. Beast breathing, second form, sharp blade chop. Inosuke immediately swung the sun wheel sword and chopped it fiercely at the floor of the combustion chamber. Bang! A burst of shattering sounds was heard, accompanied by the crisp sound of metal collision. Then, a huge cross-shaped gap was seen in the floor of the combustion chamber chopped by Inosuke, and through the gap, Tanjiro and Inosuke saw that there was a huge bone like a spine underneath. Tanjiro could see the gap line right in front of him. It was obviously the weak spot of the lower rank one. Tanjiro attacked without saying anything. Water breathing, 8th form, Taketsubo. Tanjiro raised his Nichirin sword high and then chopped down heavily on the exposed cervical vertebrae. Almost instantly, a large number of tumors grew on the exposed cervical vertebrae, and those tumors suddenly became the protection of the lower rank one to protect his weak spot. As a result, Tanjiro's Nichirin sword only chopped on those tumors and did not actually cause any damage to the cervical vertebrae of the lower rank one. The tumor was only cut into a relatively large bloody wound by Tanjiro with Taketsubo, and then the cervical vertebrae inside the tumor were exposed again for a second, and the tumor healed again. At the same time, the tumor gradually twisted and squirmed, and suddenly turned into many hands, and then quickly grabbed Tanjiro. Tanjiro immediately swung his sword to cut off the demon hands that were about to touch him, and then said to Inosuke, Inosuke, the demon's recovery ability is too strong. One person alone cannot cut off his neck. We must cooperate and attack him one after another. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 345, Falling into a Trap. You break the skin and flesh, and I'll cut off his cervical vertebrae. Tanjiro immediately explained the division of labor between the two to Inosuke. Good idea. Since it's your idea, I'll give you a chance to show it. Inosuke replied to Tanjiro like an older brother. At this moment, the tumors began to grow wildly, wrapping Tanjiro and Inosuke in them. At the same time, dense eyeballs appeared on the tumors, and the words lower string could be seen on each eyeball. The most important eyeballs were very close to Inosuke and Tanjiro, only 2 fists away. Blood Demon Jutsu, and Inosuke's Dream Eyes. One of the lower strings launched his own Blood Demon Jutsu against Inosuke and Tanjiro, trying to send Tanjiro and Inosuke into a dream, and then devour them. Seeing these eyes, Tanjiro quickly recalled Bai Yu's reminder to himself, but even if he thought of Bai Yu's reminder, it was a little late, because Tanjiro had already felt an irresistible sleepiness coming. So Tanjiro immediately reminded Inosuke, Inosuke, you can wake up immediately if you cut your throat in your dream. As soon as the voice fell, Tanjiro entered the dream. In the dream, Tanjiro was still in the combustion chamber, and countless ghost hands grabbed Tanjiro. Tanjiro chose to cut his throat in the dream without saying a word, and only woke up for a while, because Tanjiro saw the ghost dream eye of one of the lower strings again when he woke up, so he fell into a deep sleep immediately. In reality, a ghost hand has already reached out to Tanjiro. Tanjiro, who has just escaped from the dream, immediately swung his sword to cut off the ghost hand. Tanjiro only cut off the ghost hand because he looked into the eyes of the ghost dream eye. Then Tanjiro sometimes felt a burst of sleepiness. I got it again. I must close my eyes immediately after waking up this time. I must cut my neck again to wake up," Tanjiro said secretly in his heart, and then Tanjiro put the Nichiren sword on his neck, ready to commit suicide again, and return to reality. However, what Tanjiro did not expect was that the lower string one only made Tanjiro feel sleepy at the time, but he did not really let Tanjiro enter the dream this time. Because after knowing that Tanjiro could return to reality by committing suicide in a dream, the lower string one chose to play along with the enemy, letting Tanjiro enter the dream several times, and then suddenly gave Tanjiro a false signal, making Tanjiro mistakenly think that he had entered the dream again, thus ending his own life. Just when Tanjiro put it on his neck, Inosuke stopped Tanjiro and scolded him. "It's not a dream. This is reality. How can you be more stupid than me? Don't fall into his trap. It would be really boring if you die like this." Tanjiro was a little overwhelmed and couldn't react for a while, whether this was a dream or not. As soon as Inosuke finished speaking, he backhanded a knife and cut off a ghost hand that wanted to take the opportunity to sneak attack Tanjiro. Because the lower string one saw that his plan was destroyed by Inosuke, he wanted to kill Tanjiro while Tanjiro was still in a daze. Chapter 346 Fatal Rhythm. However, the finishing blow of the lower rank one to Tanjiro was resolved by Inosuke. At this time, Inosuke was not affected by the lower rank one's dream eye, which was what Tanjiro wondered, why Inosuke was not affected by the blood demon art. Or was this a plot deliberately created by the lower rank one in order to prevent himself from easily escaping from the dream? If so, then he would be in great danger. However, after a fierce ideological struggle in his heart, Tanjiro still did not dare to commit suicide easily, but asked Inosuke, "Inosuke, why are you not affected? Is this a dream or reality? I'm wearing a wild boar headgear. These dead fish eyes can't accurately capture my sight at all." Inosuke immediately replied to Tanjiro. After that, Inosuke stabbed one of the eyes with a knife. Hearing this, Tanjiro knew that what Inosuke said made sense, but Tanjiro was still considering whether to believe Inosuke. After another round of ideological struggle, Tanjiro still chose to believe Inosuke. Tanjiro, who had suffered a loss, did not dare to shift his sight elsewhere at this time, and only dared to concentrate on looking at Inosuke. "Inosuke, if this is in reality, hurry up and do it, as we agreed before." Tanjiro immediately urged Inosuke again. Hearing this, Inosuke immediately bent his knees and jumped, and then launched a powerful range attack on the ground of the combustion chamber in midair. Beast breathing, 4 types, broken blades floating. Beast breathing, 4 types, broken blades floating. This move is a move that can be used at will. There is no rule to the move, but each strike can cause extremely large and sharp jagged sword energy, which has a strong tearing type. Seeing Inosuke using his own beast breathing, Tanjiro is now more convinced that he is in reality. Although the lower rank one can control dreams, it is absolutely impossible for him to know Inosuke's breathing move. Inosuke's broken blade swung out a dozen powerful jagged sword auras, which immediately chopped the tumors that wrapped the two people into pieces. The pieces of meat were also scattered around the combustion chamber. At the same time, the gap in the floor under the combustion chamber became larger after being slashed by Inosuke more times. The cervical vertebrae of the lower string one on the floor were also more clearly exposed to Tanjiro. Tanjiro knew that the opportunity was not to be missed and immediately launched his own breathing technique. However, this time, Tanjiro did not use the water breathing, but chose to use the fire god dance breathing that his father taught him. Because when Tanjiro used the fire god dance breathing in the battle against the lower string 5 at Nada Spider Mountain, he already knew clearly that the attack caused by the fire god dance breathing was more domineering and powerful than the water breathing. Because he was afraid that the water breathing could not kill with one blow, Tanjiro chose to use the fire god dance breathing to be safer. Fire god dance, blue sky. Fire god dance, blue sky. Move details, unknown. After using the move of fire god dance, Tanjiro's Nichiren sword suddenly ignited with blazing flames and fire. Then, Tanjiro slashed from top to bottom at the cervical vertebrae of the lower rank one. Chapter 347 Train Derailment. Tanjiro held the flaming Nichiren sword with both hands and raised it high above his head, then swung it counterclockwise from top to bottom towards the cervical vertebra of the lower one. The Nichiren sword, shining with flames, instantly swung at the huge cervical vertebra, and with the counterclockwise swing of the Nichiren sword, a circular ring of fire was formed. Then, the sharp circular ring of fire instantly became larger, and radiated out in all directions. The next second, the entire combustion chamber connected to the locomotive was cut into 2 sections by this sharp circular ring of fire, and the cervical vertebra of the lower one was also completely cut into 2 sections by the sharp ring of fire. Garara, RRR, 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 RR. After that, the locomotive that was cut off by Tanjiro let out an extremely miserable cry, and the sound was like the sound of countless evil spirits in hell, extremely harsh and unpleasant. Then the locomotive derailed and flipped over the track. The carriages inside the track had become part of the body of lower string 1. After lower string 1 was beheaded, the carriages twisted painfully, as if they had life. At the same time, the tumors inside the carriages became more restless, growing uncontrollably and wildly, covering the inside and outside of the carriages in an instant, as if they were making their last struggle for survival. The tumors turned into many arms, and then kept scratching the air, as if they were unwilling to die. Tanjiro and Inosuke, who were huddled in the other half of the combustion chamber, felt the violent twisting of the carriages, and knew that they might face the situation of derailment at any time. So Tanjiro said to Inosuke, "Inosuke, hold on. It's going to flip over." As soon as he finished speaking, all the carriages derailed and flipped over on the track under the violent twisting and flipping. Although Tanjiro grabbed the window, when the carriage rolled over, the huge inertia made Tanjiro feel a tearing pain in the wound on his abdomen. The pain made Tanjiro unable to exert force, and finally Tanjiro was thrown out of the track by inertia. At this time, Inosuke showed his unique wisdom. When he could not keep his balance due to the huge inertia, Inosuke immediately inserted his 2 Nichiren swords completely into those tumors, and then he held the handles tightly to prevent himself from being thrown out by inertia. Because of the special nature of the blade of Inosuke's Nichiren sword, it can be better embedded in the flesh, which also avoids the result of being thrown out with a sword. The 10 carriages rolled over on the rails, causing a huge noise and movement. At the same time, because of the rollover at high speed, the 10 carriages slid on the rails for a distance before stopping. Therefore, during the sliding process, you can also hear the harsh metal friction sound, and see the sparks produced by the friction between the iron sheet of the carriage and the rails. When the carriage stopped sliding, the scene was already in a mess, and the tumors covering the entire carriage began to slowly turn into ashes. It can be said that when the carriage rolled over just now, these rapidly expanding tumors became cushions to protect all the innocent passengers in the carriage. These cushions were like airbags in a car, tightly wrapping everyone in the carriage to prevent people from being thrown out or bumped. Chapter 348 Tears of Confession. The first Lower Moon originally planned to create a tragic car accident before his death, so that everyone in the train would be buried with him. Unexpectedly, the stress response of his cells in the face of death protected the people in the car. This may be a great irony before his death. In the first time after the train rolled over and stopped, Inosuke immediately jumped out of the combustion chamber and then looked around the railroad tracks, looking for Tanjiro. Soon, under the light from other carriages of the train, Inosuke soon saw Tanjiro lying 10 meters away from the railroad tracks. "Tanjiro!" Inosuke shouted and ran to Tanjiro, and then Tanjiro slowly helped him up. "Are you okay? Cheer up," Inosuke asked anxiously, while patting Tanjiro's face. At this time, Tanjiro's consciousness was a little fuzzy, and his head was dizzy. Hearing Inosuke's question, Tanjiro asked back with difficulty, "Inosuke, are you okay?" "I'm fine. I don't have a cold either." Inosuke also answered very seriously. "Tanjiro, your stomach is bleeding. It seems serious," Inosuke said to Tanjiro with concern. "It's okay, Inosuke. I can't move for the time being. You go and save the others first. And the train driver who was knocked unconscious by me, how is he? Is he okay?" Tanjiro didn't care too much about his own injuries, but asked Inosuke to save others first. "Why do you care about that bad guy? That bad driver might be dead." Inosuke didn't understand why Tanjiro cared about a bad guy who hurt him. "Please, Inosuke. He must have been bewitched by the ghost to do this. He is also a victim," Tanjiro begged immediately. Seeing Tanjiro's tough attitude, Inosuke had to put Tanjiro down and said, "Since you asked me to do this, I will reluctantly help you check it out." When the car overturned, Inosuke didn't pay attention to the movements of the train driver, and he was still in a state of fainting. Maybe he had been thrown out of the car and fell to death. Even if he didn't fall to death, he must have been injured. Inosuke immediately looked around and found that the train driver's lower body was pressed under a carriage. It seemed that, because of the stimulation of the pain nerves, he had woken up from the fainting and was wailing in pain. Seeing Inosuke coming in front of him, the train driver became a little scared and drove Inosuke away, saying, "Don't come over. Don't come over." In fact, he was afraid that he would be retaliated by Inosuke, and Inosuke would naturally not give him a good face. Seeing that he was driven away, Inosuke immediately gave up the idea of helping Tanjiro. HMPH, then you can wait for death slowly, Inosuke said very unhappily, then turned around and walked away. Hearing this, the train driver realized that Inosuke was not here to retaliate against him, so he immediately stopped Inosuke and asked for help. "Don't go. Don't go. Save me. Save me. Why should I save a bad guy like you?" Inosuke replied to the train driver indifferently. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have been bewitched by that monster. Please save me. Give me a chance. I will definitely be a good person." The train driver begged Inosuke. Inosuke ignored the train driver this time, but it was not that Inosuke did not intend to save the train driver. After all, he promised Tanjiro what he would do, but Inosuke could not lift up the carriage that was pressing down the train driver by himself, so Inosuke planned to go check on the other team members first, and then find a way to save the train driver. "Hey, don't go. Please." Woo-hoo. The train driver shed tears of repentance when he saw that Inosuke was no longer paying attention to him. Chapter 349, The Magical Effects of Breathing. "I lost. My body can't regenerate. Am I going to die? How? How is it possible? I didn't eat a single person. My plan to merge with the train and devour hundreds of humans at once was all in vain. I died in this ugly state." A tumor with eyes and arms near the window of a carriage, trying to condense into a human form again, muttered to itself in dissatisfaction. However, despite the extremely hard work of the lower string one to reshape his body, it was all in vain. Although the lower string one still maintained consciousness, he no longer had any aggressiveness. Now, the only thing he could do was to twist his ugly body a few more times like a stink bug when his life completely dissipated. It's all those two guys' fault. If they hadn't stopped me from devouring, I would have devoured all the humans in the carriages. That's more than 200 people. As long as I devour them all, my strength will definitely rise to another level. By then, even the pillars can't do anything to me. Hahaha. Finally, the lower string one laughed crazily and finally died completely. The tumor with its last consciousness also completely turned into ashes. After the lower string one was completely dead, the tumors in the other carriages dissipated even faster. In just a few seconds, they completely disappeared without a trace. Not even a trace of smell was left. It was as if the lower string one had never come to this world. You should have mastered full concentration normal. Full concentration normal is the first step to becoming a pillar. You are really talented. Rengoku Kaijiro appeared in front of Tanjiro at this time and said to Tanjiro, who was lying on the ground, "Mr. Rengoku." Tanjiro immediately showed joy when he saw Rengoku Kaijiro. "Try to improve the accuracy of your breathing. Find the damaged blood vessels in your abdomen and seal the damaged blood vessels with your breathing to stop the bleeding." Rengoku Kaijiro continued to advise Tanjiro. Hearing this, Tanjiro tried to do what Rengoku Kaijiro said. The improvement of breathing accuracy allowed Tanjiro to quickly sense the movement of blood vessels throughout his body. Then Tanjiro found the severed blood vessels around his abdomen and sealed them tightly with his breathing. Well done. In addition to stopping bleeding and delaying the deterioration of injuries, breathing can also paralyze nerves and relieve the pain caused by injuries, thereby maintaining your combat effectiveness. Don't forget it next time you get injured. Rengoku Kaijiro saw that Tanjiro had stopped the bleeding of his wound, so he continued to advise Tanjiro. "I know. Mr. Rengoku. Thank you for your teachings." Tanjiro immediately thanked Rengoku Kaijiro happily. Practice breathing to the extreme. It can make you do a lot of things. Although it is not omnipotent, it can definitely make you stronger than before. Rengoku Kaijiro continued. Yes. Tanjiro answered again, and then wanted to sit up. However, Tanjiro's muscles were all in a state of weakness, so he couldn't sit up by himself. Don't force it. You lost so much blood, but you can't recover so quickly. Rengoku Kaijiro noticed Tanjiro's intention, so he said to Tanjiro. Don't worry, everyone in the car is fine. Your senior brother Bai Yu is a very powerful ghost hunter. If it weren't for Tomioka taking over the position of Shizu, this position would definitely be his. Rengoku Kaijiro said again, to make Tanjiro feel more at ease. Bang! A loud noise sounded at this time, and the sound was like the sound of an object hitting the ground heavily, and the movement was very loud. Chapter 350 Those who disobey the order will be beheaded. On the other side, after the train overturned, Bai Yu rushed to the last carriage where the Zangetsu team was. During the rescue, Bai Yu had already met Rengoku Kaijiro, and Rengoku Kaijiro also told Bai Yu about Tanjiro and Inosuke's search for the ghost body. So after the train overturned, the passengers in the carriage woke up one after another, so Bai Yu knew that Tanjiro and Inosuke must have succeeded. When rushing to the last carriage where the Zangetsu team was, Bai Yu met Rengoku Kaijiro again, and the two had a brief conversation. After Rengoku Kaijiro learned that Bai Yu was going to check on the members of the Zangetsu team, Rengoku Kaijiro chose to go to the front of the train to check on Tanjiro and Inosuke. Immediately, the two separated. After a while, Bai Yu came to the last carriage. Soon, Bai Yu saw that Agatsuma Zenitsu was protecting Nezuko, and Hattori Kyujo was hostile to Nezuko behind Agatsuma Zenitsu, and even put a knife on Agatsuma Zenitsu's neck. I'm telling you, Tigress, Nezuko is the girl that Bai Yu Sr. is determined to protect, and she is also Tanjiro's sister. If you dare to hurt her, no matter whether it's Bai Yu Sr. or Tanjiro and I, we won't let you go. Agatsuma Zenitsu warned Hattori Kyujo in a very tough attitude. Agatsuma Zenitsu's words made Hattori Kyujo a little unconvinced. She didn't believe that such a powerful ghost hunter like Bai Yu would protect a girl who turned into a ghost. Agatsuma Zenitsu's words reminded Murata Shinichi of the rumors he had heard at the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters, so he stood up and said, what Zenitsu said is very likely true. Not long after returning from Spider Mountain, I heard that Senior Bai Yu had a fight with the Wind Pillar to protect a girl who turned into a ghost. However, Murata Shinichi's words did not make Hattori Kyujo take away the Nichiren sword on Agatsuma Zenitsu's neck. The people of the second team of Zangetsu did not know about Nezuko, and when Hattori Kyujo woke up and saw Nezuko, he thought Nezuko was a ghost who came out to do evil, so he drew his sword without hesitation, but was stopped by Agatsuma Zenitsu. Then the two of them were in a stalemate, and then other people woke up one after another, but they did not draw their swords against Nezuko like Hattori Kyujo, but they were all wary of Nezuko without exception. Because the situation had been in a stalemate, there was a scene that Bai Yu saw when he arrived. Kyujo, put down the knife. None of you can hurt Nezuko, otherwise, I will be the first to kill him. Bai Yu immediately ordered Hattori Kyujo in an imperative tone, with an extremely firm and tough tone. When Kyujo heard Bai Yu's words, his eyes were full of disbelief. Bai Yu could actually say such a thing. After seeing the determination in Bai Yu's eyes, and feeling the faint murderous intent in them, Hattori Kyujo could only put away the Nichiren sword, and then kicked Bai Yu angrily. Bai Yu's behavior also made Murata Shinichi convinced of the authenticity of the rumors. After Hattori Kyujo put away the Nichiren sword, Bai Yu's expression also eased a lot, and then he formally announced to the members of the Zangetsu Team 2. Take this opportunity to formally announce to your team that, although Nezuko is a demon, she has never eaten humans, and will not eat humans. Therefore, you cannot hurt her either. Those who disobey my order will be killed. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.